Dobre utro. Good morning. Bonjour. Salut. How are you doing? Just here. Just got out of court, which is interesting because it was Zoom court. So Zoom court I'm basically still in Zoom court, even though there's no judge here. Might not be such a bad thing, the Zoom courts. I think it could improve the justice system over time. So that's interesting. So there's just some debrief stuff I wanted to go over that happened in court with the judicial pretrial. It appears that the Crown is going to be changing one of the charges that it's coming at me with, which is fine because I think I'll still be able to get one of the other charges pretty easily because of how poorly it's filed. But they've downgraded. They've downgraded from intimidation of a justice system participant to giving it more of a. They're just saying I threatened a guy, and they're going to ignore the fact that he's a judge. Now, I maintain that I didn't threaten anybody. I simply pointed out that the guy was not a fit judge to be sitting on the bench. My criticisms were maybe too harshly. That's neither here nor there. That's for a court to decide. One thing I find interesting is that they're going to tend to try and downplay and not proceed by way of indictment so I can actually plead my case to a jury. Why am I dressing up for them, old white guy? It's just, it's part of how I was raised. You go to court, you put on your Sunday best. It's not much the court that I'm dressing up for, but the Canadian people who, arguably is court's business is all about. Why am I being charged? Idiots run rampant. Well, I think it's obviously the reason why the Plaid Army doesn't face any kind of charges like this or anything like that is because they're working for the state, And I mean, the funny thing is the more I lean into, okay, you guys are saying the more that the Crown is, like my thing that I find really surprising is like in the disclosure documents, the Crown, and even at the initial bail hearing, the Crown tried to say I was a domestic terrorist in the making and that I had a plan to overthrow the government and that my news would be introduced at the end of a barrel of a gun. They said verbatim in the bail hearing. And my position is well, if you're saying that's what I'm doing, then at least charge me with the correct offense under the criminal code, because the offense for describing that type of behavior that's contained in this information that they're alleging against me, that offense is called seditious libel. It's not called threats to a justice system participant. It's not called threats. It's not an ambiguous 6(4) of the criminal code. I mean, what the Crown alleged about me in those, what the Crown alleged about me is seditious libel. And all I'm asking for, chance to answer for the charge that the Crown honestly is trying to put on me. Now they realize, of course, they wouldn't have a case, that their case would very instantly crumble if they tried to proceed with seditious libel. But that's what information says. The information says I wanted to take over the government of Canada with violence. And all I want is the opportunity to respond in court to a jury of my peers why that is insanity and why the court system that we have is actually broken. Because if you look up 59 of the the criminal code, seditious libel. That's something where there are some actual defenses that actually fit right into what I'm talking about, because I'm trying to make the Crown aware of a major problem. What am I in trouble for in episode 10? They're saying I threatened police and judges. No, I said that one judge was marked in the sense of Genesis 4:15, the way that God marked Cain. So everybody knew Cain's sin and nobody touched Cain, but Cain was an embarrassment and a shame. And that's how I want the Canadian people to look at Justice Sosin, this former dean of Ottawa Law School, because of the ruling that he made in my constitutional case, where he totally turned a blind eye to the reals that were being advanced in my constitutional challenge. Now, with regards to supposedly threatening the police, well, again, what was I pointing out? Corruption, widespread corruption in the police force, and that just following orders is not offense as per Nuremberg. Well, I'm not pleading innocent with regards to the seditious libel charge. Here, let me bring that up. I'll show it to you so you can see what I'm talking about. Seditious libel criminal code. Okay. Okay. So keep in mind, oh shit, how do I share that? Okay, this is the share screen. Okay. That is the criminal code. Okay. How does that look? We got that there? Okay. So, seditious words are words that express a seditious intention. A seditious libel is a seditious intention. Seditious conspiracy is an agreement between two or more persons to carry out a seditious intention. Seditious intention, without the generality of the meaning of the expression seditious intention, everyone shall be presumed to have seditious who teaches or advocates or publishes or circulates any writing that advocates the use without the authority of law, which is why my Constitution is so important, because it asserts an authority of law, of force as a means of accomplishing governmental change within Canada. So that's what the code is about seditious libel. Now let me go back here to the previous, 59. Exception. This is where you get into notwithstanding 59.4, okay, which is where maybe they would be able to advance their charge, or at least try. Notwithstanding, no person shall be deemed to have a seditious intention by reason only that he intends in good faith to show her majesty has been misled or mistaken in her measures. Yes, point out errors or deficits in the government or constitution of Canada or a province, parliament or the legislature of a province or the administration of justice in Canada. C, to procure by lawful means the alteration of any matter of government in Canada, or to point out for the purpose of removal matters that produce or tend to produce feelings of hostility and ill will between different classes of persons in Canada. That's my defense for what I said in episode 10. And because the government doesn't want to charge me properly with what they're saying, what they're trying to say that I did, because they're trying to say that I'm a domestic terrorist in the making. So these are charges befitting a domestic terrorist in the making. And since they already said that at the bail hearing, I think it's only fair that I be able to respond before not a judge alone, but a judge and a jury, because what I'm asserting is that Canada's justice system has slipped into disrepute. And I believe that it falls upon a jury of 12 Canadians to decide whether me saying that Canada's justice system has slipped into disrepute is treason or patriotism. And I leave that to a decision of 12 people, not to a judge that is part of this corruption. And I don't, for 1 minute, think any judge is particularly a nice actor. But the issue is there are some fundamental misunderstandings that the magistrate about deity and its position that cause the magistrate to make errant rulings successively. It's a major problem within the justice system. Brian Peckford has somewhat pointed it out. I take it a little bit further and explain it as such. There's a reason why in Freemasonry you have to have a belief in some type of God in order to practice the tenets of the faith. It literally is the perspective of an objective observer, and that's what God is. And so without the perspective of an objective observer, an individual cannot properly adjudicate, comprehend the laws of Canada. And so it's causing many atheists that are practicing law and making judgments of law, it's caused for injustice to become more rampant and widespread. In a system, the way ours is designed to operate, that sort of thing is supposed to be the exception, not the rule. And the issue is that in Canadian law, corruption is the rule, not the exception. We have a court system that is a widely kangaroo court system, and it doesn't reflect the governing principles or beliefs of the general population in Canada. I think when more Canadians get an intimate understanding of how the justice system works, they cease to give their consent to being ruled by it. And so I think by having this discussion about what Canadians should do about this criminal government that runs our society, I've put forward my position on what I think Canadians should do about a criminal government that runs their society. I think Canadians should vote with their feet, and they should support this Constitution document that I wrote, because I think it is the best solution to all of the problems that we face in Canadian society. It presents a strategy for legal reform, monetary reform, and a major military buildup. It guarantees gun rights to all civilians in Canada, a bodily autonomy. It is also a proposition of a different system of government, one with checks and balances. And so there's nothing wrong with asking the government currently in power and the legal system that currently exists to begin enforcing this new constitution, if this be the will of the. And that's the whole thing that I want people to appreciate about my crazy constitution, is that it only works if everyone's understanding of it, because then it works through a collective understanding of the people. And what I want you to try and appreciate is that all governments need to be housed in some sort of legal fiction in order for there to be the basic necessity, common things that you like about modern life. In order to facilitate that kind of operation of business, you have to have a legal fiction in order to house different corporations, business interests, all these sort of things. So what you need is a new legal fiction, one that better serves the interests of the people and harnesses the people over the economic output of corporations. I think serves all Canadians. And so I think the first way that we solve this is that we have meaningful reconciliation with First Nations people. I know an idea that makes some people uncomfortable because they don't really understand what it means. Think of it this way. Ceremonially, we are all on the Queen of England's land. And that makes no goddamn sense. And so I think it's important that we find a way to correct this injustice in a ceremonial way that recognizes kind of like a nobility and a truth of the First Nations people. And you let them have like the monarchy thing for a while. And like, keep in mind, the monarch is totally ceremonial. It has no actual power. There's a representative democracy that exists instead but it's a totally different legal fiction. It's not what the United States has, but it pays respect to the founding fathers and their original governing principles. The idea is that there is a president, there's an executive branch, and every single citizen in Canada gets to vote on who the president should be. And there's in my opinion, presidents shouldn't be affiliated with political parties. They should just be people that are outspoken. I also wrote a system where there is a Congress, and the purpose of the Congress is to regulate geographic areas. So like cities would naturally have loud Congress, but again, Congress doesn't necessarily have too much power. Congress is just able to air the concerns of the constituents, where again, you would have a limit on political, wouldn't be any political parties in Congress. It's just, again, people airing the dirty laundry. The purpose of Congress, people to air their dirty laundry of their community and figure out what to do to fix about the problems. Like, maybe they can't figure out the solutions, but they have to air what the problems are. And then there's this other building, the Senate of Parliament. And the Senate of Parliament is structured in such a way where only lawyers can be senators. And keep in mind, in this new legal system, there can be no atheist lawyer. You can be a Muslim lawyer, you can be a Jewish lawyer, you can be a Mormon lawyer, you can be a Hindu lawyer. You have to have some type of sincerely held belief in order to practice law in the new system. Otherwise, you have no ability to contemplate morality, which is what law is. It's a system of moral reasoning. And so anyone should be able to challenge the bar of law in the new society. It should be, if you can pass your bar examination, you should be able to practice law, and you should be able to get, some counts about how to better practice law. Zoroastrian lawyer, why not? Why not? I think as long as you have a sincerely held belief in some type of objective observer that you're accountable to, because that's the whole purpose of God, is that it breeds like an accountability on a personal level. And so that's why I think it's important to have this kind of tradition recognized as part of our all governing strategy. And have this widespread atheistic moral relativism system. It doesn't work. So, I'm going to continue to offer my criticisms of the Canadian justice system. I'm going to continue to suggest that there's a way forward to heal the nation and to have justice. It starts with people just, asking God about like what you're going to do with your life. What does God want? Because there's a lot of people, I think, that try and argue that, God demands that you see the book of Revelation in order to come back to the earth, and I think that's foolish. It's, you have to realize the book of Revelation was written by John the Beloved, not Jesus Christ himself. And that it's like a fever pitch dream of like bullshit that could happen, but might not. People take it a little too seriously. I I like your lay it on me, old white guy. What you got? What you got? What you got? I like your view of our legal system, but ooh, damn. All right, we got that there. Not a lot of people like the God thing, and I try and honestly, guys, I try and explain this from an atheistic perspective as well, because I think like if you can say you've done magic mushrooms and like connected to something bigger than yourself, I can accept that as an understanding of God. You know what I mean? But the whole point about God is it's like a personal understanding of the perspective, like a sliver of the perspective of what an objective observer might see about reality, right? And that's the whole thing about law. Law is supposed to be looking at reality and interpreting it from like the God life. And so if a practitioner of the law isn't able to even kind of fathom the like unable authority of an objective observer that's all seeing and all knowing, just as a thought experiment, right? If you can't philosophically house your thinking in that type of a construction, even if all religion is synthetic and fake, if you can't house your thinking in that type of a construction, then you're incapable of correctly morally reasoning. That's like the way that I try and explain it. You know, it's like the square root of -1. You know, like this is a math here. Like I don't know why writing this down will help. This is √1, right? So like this is an imaginary number. Totally, like it's totally an imaginary number. The square root of -1, we can't quantify. Like we can't quantify how square root of -1. But because mathematicians took on faith that this idea, the square root of -1, was a math value that somehow could exist, it allowed for calculations with stuff called imaginary numbers. Imaginary numbers is logical for how parts of reality that human beings can't even begin to comprehend, but we can only begin to comprehend mathematically. Because of that level of understanding, we were able to create all the technology of the modern world, because we took on faith that there was this imaginary √1 number that allows for all modern engineering. Like seriously, everything, it hinges on √1. So in the law, it's the same with like the God thing, right? It's just a point of view observer. Even if the religion that you subscribe to is totally bullshit, like the stories, they contain a history and a path to your people that's larger than yourself, and all this other stuff. So, you know, part of having a legal understanding means having the understanding of an objective observer that is mostly powerless because of human free will, but demands that human beings behave morally and righteously. The whole thing about as a philosophical principle when it relates to, this is where the understanding of like justice comes from. You can't even begin to comprehend justice without the aspect of divinity. The Bible is maybe a better place to start than, you know, weird Mormon riddle. I grew up with in the Mormon religion. So to me, I think, the religion is beautiful and stuff like that. But I also know a made up thing based off, like I understand what it is. And I think the more important thing about any religion is like, what is the personal experience that you get out of it? What do you get out of your life when you follow a religious path? Is it enriching your life? Is it making your life worse? And ultimately, at the end of the day, only you decide like what makes your life valuable. For me, part of this kind of move to try to advocate for change, meaningful change in Canadian society. So, I hope you've enjoyed this kind of debrief court thing and all that. I'll know more about what's going to happen in the future, and they're going to try and sideswipe me, so a jury trial now, which is just typical, but c'est la vie. All right.